The text came in at exactly 1:04 a.m. The screen lit up against the dark of my apartment, its glow casting strange shadows across the ceiling. I blinked into the light, assuming it was a system alert or some midnight spam. But no, it was from my mother. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about Thanksgiving. Lena has taken the lead on planning this year. She's invited a few of her colleagues, and, well, she feels it's best if you don't come. We hope you understand." I sat up slowly, read it again, then again, waiting for the words to rearrange into something less absurd, something sane. Another ping. "Lena thinks your presence might create tension. She wants it to be a sophisticated evening, and she's put a lot of work into this. Please don't take it personally." I stared at the screen until my thumb finally moved. I typed one word, "noted," and hit send. That was all I gave them. No questions, no anger, no reminders. Not even a reminder of the 6 Trum Tom Moi Nhin Jola I had wired to their mortgage company 6 months earlier, draining the brokerage account I'd built over 15 years, or the rental property I'd sold to make it happen. Not a word about the nights I skipped meals to hit savings goals, the years of second-hand furniture and 80-hour weeks. Not even a whisper about the papers they'd signed so desperate. They hadn't even read the fine print. They hadn't just uninvited me from Thanksgiving. They had confirmed what I hadn't wanted to admit when I paid off their debts, that love in our family had a hierarchy. And I was somewhere below optics and convenience. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I placed my phone on the nightstand and turned off the lamp, and in the stillness of that early morning, I realized something else. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was done. I closed my eyes and slept better than I had in weeks. By morning, I had already called my lawyer. It started with student loans and frozen dinners. My first tech job paid just enough to cover rent and ramen, but I kept my head down and worked, while others in the office chased promotions with designer bags and networking brunches. I taught myself back-end frameworks on weekends. I skipped vacations, wore the same 3 thrifted coats every winter. I never complained. By 26, I had my emergency fund. By 30, I'd saved enough to buy a small rental duplex an hour outside Seattle, nothing glamorous. Just solid, quiet, like me. Meanwhile, Lena floated from one passion project to the next. She quit law school halfway through, claimed she wanted to start a wellness brand, and racked up tens of thousands on our parents' credit cards for investor meetings in Napa and Miami. When she came home, she brought back nothing but scented candles and vague stories about potential partnerships. Every time, our parents cleaned up after her, or rather, they called me, "Can you help cover this month's minimum? She says she just needs a little more time. Lena's trying so hard, she just needs support." I sent what I could, sometimes more. I watched their mortgage payments lapse while Lena leased a new SUV with custom rims. I watched my mother cry about property taxes, while Lena posted poolside brunches on Instagram. Still, I said nothing, because I loved them. Because I thought being useful was the same as being valued. I told myself the house would stabilize them, that paying it off would stop the bleeding. I sold the duplex, took the tax hit, and transferred every last dollar I had, 6 Trum Tom Moi Nhin Jola, to their lender. They called me a blessing. They promised to pay me back. They said Lena finally understood the damage she'd caused. I wanted to believe them. I really did. But 6 months later, the only thing I received was a text disinviting me from dinner. And that's when I remembered the one thing they had forgotten. I hadn't just given them money. I had made them sign a contract. I still remember the look on their faces the day I handed them the papers. Mom's eyes were swollen from crying. Dad kept rubbing the back of his neck like it hurt to admit how bad things had gotten. Lena wasn't there. She was in Tulum, supposedly networking. They hadn't even told her how close the house was to foreclosure. Or maybe they had. Maybe she just didn't care. They had called me their last hope. I told them I would help, but not without conditions. For once, I wasn't going to throw a financial lifeline with no boundaries attached. My lawyer, Marcy had drawn up a clean, binding agreement. They would have 6 months to either repay the loan in full or begin monthly rent at market rate. If neither happened, the house would be formally transferred to me, and I could do what I wanted with it. They signed without reading past the first page. "You've always been the reliable one," Mom said, clutching my hand like I was a miracle. "I don't know what we'd do without you." They didn't know that this time. I wasn't doing it for them. Not really. I was doing it to survive being part of this family without losing myself in the wreckage. Now, sitting at my kitchen table in the morning light, I opened my laptop and clicked into the folder labeled Alden, Legal. Inside was everything signed PDFs, payment confirmations, notarized forms, copies of the wire transfer, a paper trail for every promise, every cent. It wasn't spite. It was structure. My version of protection. And they had forgotten all of it. They'd been so used to my silence that they mistook it for surrender. But I hadn't forgotten. And the contract had a date on it. That date was tomorrow. I didn't want to make a scene. That was never the point. The moment I confirmed the contract date, everything fell into place. There was no speech to prepare, no confrontation to script, just a series of quiet, deliberate actions, each one an undoing of the version of me they thought I'd always be. I opened a new tab, typed in my airline rewards login, and booked a one-way, first-class ticket to the Maldives, window seat, departure. Thanksgiving morning. Then I texted Marcy, "Go ahead, serve the notice during dinner. They'll be home." She didn't ask why. She'd seen the files, heard the tone in my voice when I first came to her 6 months ago. I didn't want their house. I didn't want payback. What I wanted, what I'd always wanted, was a family that didn't make me earn my place at the table by bleeding for it. They hadn't left me out of Thanksgiving. They had freed me from one more year of pretending to belong. I closed my laptop and walked to the bedroom. In the closet. My suitcase still had the tag from my last work trip. I packed it slowly: swimsuits, linen dresses, 2 books I'd been meaning to read, and the folded copy of the contract. Not to wave around, but to remind myself I didn't imagine this. I didn't overreact. I gave them the chance to do right by me, and they chose not to. I wasn't going on vacation. I was choosing not to carry what wasn't mine anymore. As I zipped the bag, I heard a ding, another message from Mom. "We hope you're not too upset. Sweetheart, Lena's just under pressure, and this dinner means a lot. We'll celebrate with you another time." I didn't reply. By the time they'd be passing appetizers, the notice would be in their hands. Thanksgiving arrived with the precision of a well-rehearsed performance. Lena had hired a caterer. There were crystal wine glasses on rented tables. She'd posted a boomerang on her story that morning, candied pecans tumbling into a bowl, captioned, "Elevated holiday energy." What she didn't post was the moment a courier arrived at the door with a flat manila envelope bearing our family's last name. I didn't see it in person. Of course. I was at SeaTac, sipping an oat milk latte in the first-class lounge, watching rain trace soft lines across the windows. The first message came from Dad. "What is this legal notice? Call us immediately." Then, Mom, Emma, "You can't do this. This is our home." And Lena, "Predictably last, you're insane. You're ruining everything." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The contract was clear: 6 months from the date of transfer. They would either repay the full amount or begin paying rent. If not, the property would revert to me, and legal proceedings would begin. The papers they'd just received were the first step in that process, a formal reminder of the terms they'd signed, with the eviction clause highlighted in bold. From what Evelyn told me later, Lena's boss and his wife were already seated at the table when the envelope was opened. He saw the panic, the shouting, Mom crying in the kitchen, Dad making threats about lawyers he couldn't afford, Lena trying, and failing, to explain why the house might not be theirs for much longer. I imagined her face, the scramble behind the smile, the illusion cracking in real time. I looked down at my boarding pass. Gate B3, Maldives. Via Doha, as the attendant called first-class boarding. I drained the last of my drink, slipped on my coat, and walked toward something quiet. Not revenge, just relief. The call came 2 days into my trip, just as the sun began to slip behind the turquoise edge of the horizon. I answered without checking the screen. "Sweetheart," Grandma Evelyn said, her voice warm and just a little amused. "You should see what you've done." I leaned back into the cushions of the villa's patio and closed my eyes. "It's a mess, I assume." "Oh, it's magnificent," she chuckled. "Lena's perfect dinner collapsed in under 20 minutes. Your father shouted himself hoarse. Your mother was sobbing into a dish towel. The boss's wife asked if this was a bad time and excused herself halfway through dessert. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. She lost the promotion." Grandma continued. "Apparently, her boss doesn't appreciate being lied to, or hosting dinner in a house that doesn't legally belong to her family. I didn't feel joy. Not exactly. Just a clean, sharp sense of correction, of truth finally being louder than the performance. And your father," she added, voice softening. He found the statements, the ones showing Lena's been taking out cash advances in their names for months. "He's furious. First time I've ever seen him like this. That landed harder than anything else. Dad had always been silent when it came to Lena. Disappointed. Maybe. But never truly angry. Never willing to look her choices in the face. Until now. They want to talk." Evelyn said. "All of them. Even Lena. I think they're ready to listen." I let the silence settle between us for a beat, the waves lapping softly nearby. "I'll come home," I said. "Tell them to meet me at my place the day after I land." Grandma hummed in approval. "I've waited 15 years for someone to stand up to Hurricane Lena. Thank you for being the one." I smiled as the line went quiet. This time, I wouldn't be returning as their backup plan. I arrived in Seattle just after dawn. The city still quiet. Streets slick with rain. By the time I reached my apartment, they were already waiting. My mother stood when I opened the door, eyes tired, hands clenched in front of her like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to reach for me. Dad looked older, smaller, and Lena barefaced, hair pulled back. Not a designer label in sight sat on the edge of the couch like someone bracing for impact. I didn't offer hugs. I didn't offer tea. I sat across from them, opened my laptop, and clicked into the presentation I'd prepared on the plane. "I'm not here to argue," I said. "I'm here to offer a path forward. 3 slides, 3 options. Option 1, sell the house. Liquidate non-essential assets, Lena's car, the Aspen timeshare, designer items, and use the proceeds for a down payment on a modest home. Option 2, Dad launches the accounting firm he's always talked about. I fund it as a documented loan, with structured repayments and quarterly reviews. Option 3, Lena checks into a financial therapy program. No phones, no spending, no external funding for 1 month. I moved through each option slowly, clearly, no guilt, no apology. This isn't punishment, I said. This is structure. A future with accountability. No one spoke right away. Mom's eyes brimmed. Dad stared at the floor. Lena didn't move. Then she finally asked, "Why are you doing this?" After everything I've done, I looked at her, not the polished version. Not the storm she threw at everyone else, but the girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. "Because you're my sister," I said. "And because I believe the part of you that wants to change is still in there." She nodded once. Barely. And for the first time. No one interrupted me when I clicked to the next slide. Lena broke first. Not with shouting or blame, but with something quieter. Her voice cracked as she said, "I don't want to be this person anymore." Her eyes stayed fixed on the rug, shoulders hunched like she was trying to disappear into the floor. I waited. Mom turned to me next. "We didn't know what to do," she said. "We were scared. Every time we tried to talk to her, she'd explode. And we let it go on because we were afraid of losing her. Dad cleared his throat. We thought we were protecting the family by keeping the peace, but we weren't. We were enabling her and failing you. I didn't respond right away. There were 100 things I could have said, a decade's worth of silence I could have broken wide open. But instead, I opened the folder on the table, the original contract. I'm not rescinding this. I said, you signed it because you needed help, and I honored that. What you do next is your choice. But this time, I won't be cleaning up without boundaries. Dad nodded slowly. We understand. Mom reached out, fingers trembling as they touched the edge of the paper. Can we still fix this? You can start, I said. Fixing is your job now, not mine. Lena lifted her eyes. I'll do the treatment, she whispered. If you'll help me get in, I'll go. I will, I said. But not because I owe it to you. Because I want the version of you who meant it when she said she wanted to change to have a chance. She blinked, a tear slipping down her cheek. It didn't fix anything, but it cracked something open. Dad nodded. We'll follow the terms. It was the first time they'd said that without flinching, and I believed them just enough to let the moment be real. We met again the following week, this time at a notary's office downtown. No kitchen table, no trembling hands and vague promises. Just documents, dates, and signatures. I'd rewritten the terms with Marcy's help. Clear expectations, timelines, consequences. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. Trust, after all, had a cost, and this time, it came with paperwork. Lena signed first. Her hand shook slightly, but she didn't hesitate. She was checked into the financial therapy center by that evening. No phone, no credit cards, no curated reality, just truth. Budgets, group sessions, and the mirror she'd avoided for years. Dad signed next, in exchange for my startup loan. He'd mapped out a plan to finally open the accounting firm he'd always talked about but never dared begin. He already had a small client list, thanks to a few people I'd referred from my own circles. He looked both terrified and alive. Mom didn't speak much, but she showed me a list of designer pieces she'd already sold, antiques she'd agreed to part with. A full spreadsheet, categorized by value and buyer. It wasn't just money. It was her saying, I'm in this too. Grandma Evelyn stood beside me through it all. When it was time for a witness signature, she stepped forward without being asked. About time someone ran this family like a business, she muttered, pen pressed to paper. There were no hugs afterward, no dramatic apologies or swelling music, but no one walked out, no one tore up the paper, and no one asked for anything different. As we left the office, I carried the signed copies in my bag, not like a weapon, but like armor I should have had years ago. For the first time, everything that mattered between us wasn't buried under guilt or obligation. It was spelled out, clearly, and they chose it anyway. The snow started just after sunset. Not heavy, just enough to coat the rooftops and blur the edges of the streetlights outside my window. I stood there for a long time, watching it gather in soft layers across the city. Everything felt quieter in the snow, even memory. My phone buzzed behind me on the kitchen counter. I didn't rush to check it. I didn't flinch. It was Evelyn. You didn't destroy anything, you reset the story. I read the message twice, then once more, just to feel it settle, for so long. I thought my only options were silence or explosion, that I had to either swallow the dysfunction or burn everything down to prove I mattered, but I hadn't chosen either. I'd written terms, held a line, walked away without slamming the door, and somehow, they'd walked toward me. I turned back to the window. A faint outline of my reflection stared back, older than before, a little sharper around the eyes, but steady, present. Lena had been at the treatment center for 10 days. She'd sent me a letter handwritten, shaky in places, honest in a way I hadn't expected. She hadn't asked for forgiveness. She'd asked for space to keep trying. It was the most adult thing she'd ever written. Dad emailed me a rough draft of his business website that morning. No flash, just basic services, contact form, pricing. He'd even asked for feedback. And Mom. She'd forwarded me a receipt from Goodwill. 8 bags of clothes, 4 pieces of furniture, 1 designer handbag she said she didn't even remember buying. They were trying. And for the first time. I wasn't bleeding to make it happen. I closed the curtains. The snow kept falling. In my living room, a single folder sat on the shelf next to my record player. Inside it, the original contract, the new agreement, and a copy of Lena's intake form from the clinic. Not to hold over them, just to remind myself what I'd done, what I'd claimed, this time. The piece was mine, because I hadn't broken to get it. I'd built it, brick by brick, line by line, boundary by boundary.